and in this week's video, we're going to look at Drupal theming, specifically Drupal 7 theming, and how to convert a static template into a Drupal 7 theme. Now, a couple of disclaimers before we get started. Number one is that when I've done this video, but tried to do this video before, I haven't done it in under 40 minutes. So sit back, relax, and get prepared for a long video. The next one is that the template we're going to use is provided free by freecsstemplates.com. So definitely check them out. The third one is that we're not going to be importing the content that you see here. We're just going to be getting the content from our Drupal site to display it in this way and applying our content to applying our styling to this content. So, few disclaimers there. Here is the demonstration website we're going to be using. So we're going to be putting the content from this website into that theme that I just showed you. So let's get started. First thing we're going to do is we're going to upload the file, the template that we got, into our sites or themes folder. We're just going to upload that. Once that's uploaded, we're going to need to create a new file inside of that folder on the server, which is going to be our theme name.info. So in our case, enormous.info. And to save time in this tutorial, I'm going to paste in an info file and then we're just going to look for it really quick. Firstly, we define a name. So in our case, we're just going to change that to enormous. So there's some way to distinguish between different themes in the Drupal admin interface. So it's going to be called enormous there. But that's not all we need.
It's 22 hours.
That's not all we need to do to actually get our things to display. Let me just go through what each of these things is first. We define a name, a description, a core, which, because we're theming in Drupal 7, which I mentioned at the start, we're using a core of 7.x. We define a version and an engine, and we define CSS files, which you can see our style sheet link as we've defined here. Our main style sheet is at style.css. So we're going to need that so Drupal can use it later. We have a script included in here as well, which we're not going to need for this particular tutorial. So now we have the info file done. What's next? Well, we need to go into the file that contains the main structural markup. So in this case, index.html. I'm going to rename it to html.tpl.php. Since Drupal 6, all of these files are crucially made up for these templates, or tpl.php files. So the one where our main structural HTML markup is going to go is our html.tpl.php file, but we're going to create another one which is going to be page.tpl.php file, and this is part of Drupal's modular structure. What this is going to do is going to contain all the content from our HTML file. So we're going to look at our html.php file here, and everything inside of the body tags we're just going to stick so we're just going to get everything that's inside the body text, and we're going to put that into our page.tpl.php file, and we'll deal with that later. So first we'll deal with this html.tpl.php file, since it's the kind of skeletal bones for our file. So what we're going to put in here, well, now is a good time to mention that in Drupal to spit out the dynamic content that's relevant to what you want, you print out the given variable, and that's exactly what we're going to do here. So we're going to replace all our information that's in our Drupal site with variables that are appropriate for that particular type of content. So let me just show you what I mean. In our head section right now, we have some meta information which gets generated by Drupal. It has the options for smart Drupal content. It has options for smart titles depending on what's on the page, and as we saw earlier in the info file, it sorts out its own CSS and script files. So that means we can get rid of everything we see here and replace it with Drupal content. And what are we going to replace it with inside of the head section? Well, we're just going to put some small placeholders there that are basically going to stick a bunch of HTML content dynamically into the page before it loads, and it's going to get these from Drupal. Now these are predefined what we call PHP variables, and PHP variables are what Drupal is based on to print out content. So those are predefined variables, and if you go to the page.tpl.php page on Drupal.org, it'll tell you about the different things you can put in here and the different Drupal content it'll spit out. We're going to use a few, and these are quite common. So if you do a lot of Drupal theming, you get to know these really pretty easy. And I know a lot of these off by heart, but if you don't, just know that you can get them from there. So the structure is that we're going to do PHP print and then the name of whatever the variable is. So in this case, to print out all the meta information like we had before, but in this time get it dynamically from Drupal, we're just going to say PHP print head. We then, to get all those dynamic CSS files, because at the moment we haven't got any links to any CSS files, I'm going to say PHP print styles, and that'll get all CSS files and just stick all the HTML for those files in there. Now, Drupal also uses a lot of JavaScript, and there was no JavaScript in this particular theme, but we're going to tell it where to put JavaScript just in case the JavaScript variable has anything to print out. So we're going to go PHP print scripts. Now, there's one thing that we haven't taken care of here, that was in the head section before, and is in the head section of every website, and that's the title tag. And this time what we're going to do is we're actually going to make a title tag. And in Drupal, you have certain kinds of variables. Some variables contain HTMLs, so they're used on their own, like the variables we just printed. But some variables, like the one I'm about to show you, are designed to work within tags. So, there's a variable called head title, which we can put inside title tags to give the web browser a title. Because PHP is a server-side language, by the time this page gets to the browser, it'll just see HTML. It won't see any of this funky PHP stuff. We're going to go PHP print head title. So we replaced all the content in our head section with dynamic content. We're going to continue that trend throughout. But what we want to do now is we want to put something in the body section, because we want all that content from our Drupal system to print out. We don't just want an empty page. So to make that happen, we need to put something in the body tags. And what we need to put in is 3 more variables that are just going to, again, spit out HTML from the Drupal system. And just put it in there. The first one we're going to do is go PHP print page top. PHP print page top. And what that'll do is tell Drupal where the opening body tag ends. So if any module needs to insert any code right at the top of the body tag, it knows where to find it, basically. And the next one we're going to do is go PHP print page. And what this is going to do is it's going to stick every single piece of content from our page.tpl.php file right in between the body tags. So this, by the time the page gets to the browser, all this markup is going to display right after the body tag. So the first thing the browser is going to see after the body tag is this div with an ID of wrapper. Similarly, we have to define a variable called PHP print and then this time it's a variable called page button. I don't know why that went weird there, but page button. Unlike page top, this is going to tell our system where to stop printing the stuff from that page.tpl.php file. So just like that's going to ensure that the last thing at the end of every page is before the body tag is the closing wrapper div. So the CSS is going to see the same markup, but we've printed it out dynamically. So we've got a good start going here. Now that we've dealt with the html.tpl.php file, we can now move on to the page.tpl.php file. And you might say, well, we've already put all our markup in the page.tpl.php file. Well, this is our static markup from our static website. But the whole point here is that we want to display Drupal content. We want to display Drupal content to the user. We don't just want to put Drupal content into the head section. So we need to replace some of the content here with Drupal content. Now, you might say, if we're just going to be replacing it again, why did I copy and paste all this markup in here if we're just going to delete it? Well, that's because the CSS is targeting this page and targeting things on this page. We want to leave it structurally alone as much as possible, so that we can just leave the CSS alone and it can deal with itself. So if we have exactly the same markup but just spitting out all our Drupal content, the user's going to see our Drupal content and it's going to be controlled by Drupal, but it's just going to look the same, but it's going to be Drupal content, which is exactly what we want. So we're going to start with the title here, and we have to think of a Drupal snippet which is appropriate for what we want. So this is our site. That was our site title, and there's a variable to get that from Drupal. So we're just going to say PHP print site name. And because we haven't messed about with any of this markup around it, the CSS is still going to target it, and the hierarchy is still going to be the same, but the text is just going to be different. So that is exactly what we want. But you notice that the hrefs just got this hashtag, and that's just for demonstration purposes. But now that we've got it on a real website, we can make sure we always have the URL for the front page, which is where this is supposed to point to. So we can just say PHP print front page, and we can close that off. So it's just going to put the URL to that front page in that link. Next thing we need to deal with is this is the site slogan, and there's a variable for that in Drupal. So once again, keeping the same markup, we're just going to stick our text right where the old text was. So it's going to look exactly the same. But to get dynamically, like we've been doing this whole time, we're just going to say PHP print site slogan. Okay, so we've dealt with that kind of header area. Next is the div with an ID of menu. Now, it's going to be a little bit different because the way I code Drupal menu, it comes out with clean code and it's going to give us all the stuff that we need, but it means we can't change the class names on the menu to fit with the markup that's already there. So we're going to have to use content that the menu provides us to make sure that the classes adapt and still display exactly the same. So I'm just gonna sneak off for a while and get some code for the menu, and I'll explain it to you guys. See you in a minute. Hey guys, again, I got the code and we're just gonna take a look through it. So we're gonna replace our existing markup with this code because it's going to generate a dynamic menu for the menu items we have set up on our website. So we're going to leave the div that wraps around behind it, so the CSS is still the same. But we're gonna get rid of the unordered list because this code is going to generate an unordered list for us. There are a couple of things to bear in mind though, namely this class of current page item, but luckily this menu spits out classes like that for us. So all we need to do is change the class in our CSS that was for the current page styling, which is current page item, into whatever the menu gives us. So let's get rid of the whole unordered list and paste in our our thing here. And right off the bat, there's some problems with the indenting, but hey, the code is the code. So let's take a look at what this is doing here. So first of all, we're gonna check if there's a main menu, because in Drupal you can get rid of menus, and theoretically you could not have a menu. So we're gonna we're going to check if there's something called main menu, and then if there is, we're going to get the menu with this name and basically print out an unordered list of the links, but we're not going to if it doesn't exist. So that's what all that's all about. So now we've dealt with that menu, so we're gonna leave that alone for now, because like I said, we'll need to change some classes later to get this to do what we want to do, but that's what we need to do for the markup, and we're concentrating on the markup right now, so we're going to leave that alone. Okay, the next thing we need to do is look at the different aspects of our site, look at what they are, and look at types of Drupal content we can use. So let's take the main content area. We have a div with an ID of page and a div with an ID of content. Once again, we're gonna leave those alone, but we're gonna get rid of all these divs class to post, because they're all our actual content, and we want Drupal to generate all that for us based on how many we want that to be generated based on how many actual posts there are in the system. So here we are done with the main content, and this is also part of the main content, this about. So we're gonna no, actually we're not gonna get rid of this about, because there's a separate variable we can use for that. But inside this content section, what we're gonna do is find Drupal stuff that will print out the content that was there before, but that will do it dynamically from our Drupal install. So we're going to get into some specific Drupal stuff now. We're going to just say, as a precaution, no, actually, first we're going to print the title variable, so whatever the title is for the current page, we're going to have it printed out. And actually, this on its own won't spit out any markup, so we're going to sandwich it in typical title tags. So we're going to say H2. So let's make sure that the title for that current page is the first thing that gets printed out. So this is a good start. And now we're going to get into some really specific Drupal stuff. So something in Drupal is, because it's dynamic, the page gives you messages. So if there's any security problems on the site or anything like that, it gives you messages. So we need to make sure we can see those messages. So first we're going to check. We're going to do another one of these if statements to say if Sorry about that. I'm going to say if messages exist.
It's 20 to 30.
So that's like, if they exist part, we're going to print out the messages because there's no point printing them if they don't exist. So we're going to print out the messages. Then we're going to end the if statement so that we're basically saying, okay, that's all we want you to do if there are messages. What do we want next? Well, it turns out we want another thing that's specific to Drupal called tabs, and because we're going to use the same structure, I'm just going to cut and paste that and then change it so we can look at this. So this time we're going to check. We're going to check if there's a tabs present, and tabs are pretty critical in Drupal, and what they do is allow users to navigate the content, allow administrators to edit the content, and you couldn't administer the Drupal interface without tabs, so they're pretty critical. But we don't want to print out any tab markup if there isn't tabs. So we're going to check if the tabs variable exists, and then as usual, if it does, we're going to print it. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to do it before the tabs, and that's just a visual choice. If there's any admin text, we want to make sure that gets printed, but that's a region, so nothing will print there if there's nothing to print. So the syntax for printing out a region is PHP print a part of the render function. So render, and we're going to say what part do you want? Well, we want the page. We're then going to say what piece of the page. Well, we want the help region. So this is just going to print out any help text specific to Drupal to help out administrators, and it really is helpful. So this is a must to put in your theme. So sorry, just a little structural error there. for the next thing, what do we want next? Well, we've printed out messages, we've printed out help, and we've printed out tabs. But these are all admin related stuff that isn't going to get seen by the end user. So now it's time to print out something that is actually going to get seen by the end user. So we're going to print out we're going to get this, print out another variable, and I believe it's just called content. So this will stick everything that's meant to go on that page in that specific place. So and by default all posts are in divs and IDs of posts. So the markup is going to look exactly the same. So it's all going to work in the CSS with that stock content function. So we don't need to do any editing there. Well, so let's carry on down the file. We've dealt with the main content section. So what do we need to do next? Well, there's this div with ID of about, which basically handles some highlighted content. So we're gonna deal with that in our own way. I'm gonna get rid of the whole thing, but we're gonna leave the div so it leaves the styling, remember. But we're gonna get rid of everything that is in that div. And what we're going to put inside it instead is just ask it print out another region. Again, stick all the content that you found in that region in this div. So we're just going to say PHP print. And then render page highlighted or highlight. And remember again, I said this is a stock Drupal region in which we can put anything we want. There's going to be nothing in it by default, but it is specifically designed for this sort of purpose. So we can put all the text that was in there in a new what's called a block in Drupal. But the important part is with this now, Drupal has control over it. And we put an appropriate thing in the appropriate place. So the next thing we're looking at is this is all sidebar content. Now, Drupal, one of its strongest points is its block system, and it has a really nice way of handling sidebar content automatically. So all we're going to do is tell it where the sidebar is, and then let it decide what it wants to put in the sidebar, and we can control that from within Drupal. So we're just going to go right up to there, and inside that we're just going to put one simple line to replace all that content again, just to tell Drupal where to find the sidebar region and where it can stick any sidebar content if it wants to. But again, we're just going to use a predefined variable to do that, and it's just going to be PHP print sidebar first. And this is all, so it's just going to put all the Drupal content in that place. Now, this next bit is for, I don't agree with this way of doing things, but this is for CSS reasons, so we're going to leave that alone. There's no content that needs to go in there. We're now going to move to this div with ID of footer. Now, I'm just going to leave this here because this is for demonstration purposes, and it states in the licensing for this theme that in order to use it, you must leave this exact markup that's in the footer in the theme. So I'm just going to leave it there. If it was in production, I wouldn't leave it there because you have footer variables that you set in Drupal, much like you can set the site name, so you just leave it to print out there. I could do that now, but I'm going to leave the static markup there instead. But we are going to show you how to print out the footer stuff. So all we're going to do is go PHP print. Once again, we're going to use the render function to tell it where to find the footer. But we're also going to use that specific variable set inside of Drupal that I talked about, where you can set your own variable over one in Drupal. So we're just going to say PHP print footer message. So now we've replaced all our markup with Drupal related markup, so our site should render Drupal stuff. Looking over the markup that I've just written, there's one thing that I've noticed that we haven't done, and for this amount of markup, only one thing to miss is quite a mean fit in my opinion. There's one region that we haven't defined, so I'm just gonna copy this markup. We haven't told it where the header is. Again, you might think we're adding markup, but if you don't put anything there, it won't add anything, so you don't need to worry about the CSS. But it's a good idea to tell to tell Drupal where the header is. So we're just going to do that. I'm going to go PHP print header, and that's all we're going to do. We should now have our Drupal website display in our templated layout that we looked at in the template. Now, there's a couple of things I want to mention. You're probably fed up of listening to me talk, but there's a couple of things I need to mention. Firstly, in the interest of brevity, although this screencast wasn't very brief, we had to leave out some things, and there's a lot more things you should really put in this file, but I was just trying to give you kind of a high level overview. So there you go. And there's another thing I want to mention. Because the markup isn't going to be exactly the same, because the content variable is going to print out some slightly different stuff, and I've got different stuff in my sidebar. I've also got different links in my navigation to what's on the page. The content isn't going to be the same, but that's because we've got this theme printing out in its style Drupal content. I should also note that when we first refresh the page, our navigation menu isn't going to work because we're not using those classes that were predefined for it. We're using our own menu that we'll need to adjust the CSS to fit. So what we're going to do now is we're going to go over there, look at this theme. So we should be seeing our content displayed in this fashion. Because our content isn't going to be exactly the same height or anything as that content, it's going to look a bit weird, but we should be seeing this content displaying in that theme. So what we're going to do is go over, and after all this work we did, we're going to administer appearance. And scroll down a little bit. I just refresh again. We see a new theme with the name that we defined was enormous. Now, before I click enable and set default, I just want to note that there will be something that I've forgotten. I know before I even hit the button that this won't be perfect. It could be awful, but let's just take a look. So remember, this was our Drupal content, and this is what we wanted to display in this kind of layout. So let's jump off a bridge, hit enable and set default, and see how we did. So it turns out we did pretty poorly. Let's go ahead and see what we did wrong. By the fact that our web page isn't wrapping, I can just tell that Drupal's spitting out its default markup and not ours. So we must have done something fundamentally wrong. So I'm going to check that all our files have the right names. So for one thing, we didn't save the page.tpl.php file. But I think the main problem here is that Drupal has caching enabled, so it will remember the default one and not our one. So it's now call onto page.tpl.php file, and it's telling us that it can't render because we did something wrong. So let's go ahead and look at what we did wrong. On line 5 of page.tpl.php it says. Okay, so we need to close out that reference to an array. See if that did the trick. We did it again. Down here in the footer where we copied it from. Here's a tip. PHP, always make sure you close exactly what you open. Everything that you open has to be closed. Let's go over the page and refresh and see if we can at least get something to show up. Okay, so we notice the page is fundamentally showing up in our area. I mean, we've got the title showing up, we've got a navigation link showing up in the navigation area, and we've got some content here, but something clearly isn't right. So let's figure out kind of what else we did wrong. I think what the problem is that we need to use the same syntax to denote the content area as we do any other region. So I think we might need to go render content let's see if that kind of did the trick. Well, it did the trick a bit, but it showed us a few more errors. So these are things that we can go back and fix. So all these undefined variable things we need to fix. So the first thing is, looks like I've spelt site slogan wrong. So you probably guys all laughed at me, but here we go, site slogan. So that should sort one problem out at least. But there's another problem. It still doesn't like the way I've written this PHP print content. So I'm gonna actually take you guys to another theme that I built. I'm gonna see how I did it there. This kind of live troubleshooting stuff is what you have to do kind of in real life. So let's look at how I did it there, because I can't remember. So you have to do a full render page content. Let's just copy that. So it's just like defining any other region. I thought there was some special syntax, but obviously not. So we'll just make sure that saves again without any defects. I'm going to go back over to our file in the thing that we're currently working on. I'm going to replace our incorrect code with the correct version that we just found. So, save that. See if that kind of solves any of our errors. So if you look, we've now got our Drupal displaying. So a lot of our stuff is working now. For one thing though, we've still not sorted out our site slogan variable. Our sidebar is missing, and our footer is missing. So let's deal with those issues. Well, we can reference our file again and try and find out what the correct syntax was for our sidebars, because we obviously got it wrong. So we can go back over and we see we should have done another render, and not just outputted it as a static variable. So we're gonna go back and find it, and instead of that, we're gonna have a render like we did for everything else. So now that our sidebar is working, that should be pretty much working. Now I also noticed that there's no longer a variable called footer message. We just render the footer now, so we no longer need that. We refresh the page. Our sidebar is showing up. It's showing up our Drupal sidebar, and obviously our slogan is now showing up. I don't know. Let's just go back to the home page a second. And we see we've got our Drupal sidebar showing up in there. So fundamentally, we've got everything working. But I don't understand this little issue.
It's 23 hours.
With the sidebar, but let's deal with the navigation for now. So we need to figure out what special classes this is using that are different from what we're using. Well, for one thing, we know that it was using a class of current page item to denote its the static item. So to train that, we're just going to go back into our CSS. Sorry, wrong CSS file. To our enormous CSS file. And just no, the reference we actually want to make is the not current page item. We want it to reference where does it reference current page item? Menu current page item. So this is our opportunity to fix that. So anything that has in this Drupal menu, and I just happen to know that, but you could figure this out by looking at the source code. And I happen to know that in Drupal, any anchor link with a class of active is going to display the same as current page item was doing for that page. So just going to add it in class of active. And we may have to go over to the performance screen and refresh the cache, because I know you have to do that sometimes. So fix the issue. If we go on to the contact link, so will be the active link. It's got the active styling now. Just doesn't look like a navigation menu anymore. That's because I haven't got multiple navigation menu links on my site, and I've just got the one. So just to show you that this would actually look the same if it was a menu, I'm going to go into my menus. And add a link. To the main menu for the home page. I'm going to save that. I just did that to show you this is actually a menu, not just not just a one link floating out nowhere. Let's look back at our template and look at how this is different to our template. Well, for one thing, let's look at how the resulting markup is different from the markup that we had. So it has all these blocks. I'm gonna leave this here for now. Not because you can't do it, but because this video has already dragged on for over an hour. What you have to do is look at the markup, see how it's different from what you started with, and see how you can alter your CSS to accommodate that new markup if you can't change the markup. But as you see, the title displays exactly the same, the text displays exactly the same, and the sidebar displays exactly the same. Everything else is a bit of a mess, but at its core, we've got stories displaying like we had before. So I'm going to end the screencast, and I'm going to not on any longer. So thanks for watching this video, guys. Anyone who's listened to me drone on for all this time deserves a medal. Rate this video if you've liked it, and I'm going now. I'll see you in the next video, guys. Bye bye.